So now it gives me great pleasure to welcome from the Wellcome Trust, Alan DANGOUR, Director of Climate and Health. Alan.
Wow, how brilliant. Wonderful to be here. Thank you very much for coming in on a Monday morning. It's superb. A very warm welcome to the Conduit and to this fabulous day dedicated to climate and health solutions. I'm Alan DANGOUR. I'm the Director of Climate and Health at Wellcome, and I'd like to extend a huge thank you to Paul, the Conduit team, Wellcome colleagues, and our partners, and the exceptional speakers coming up today for making this event happen. We're in for a really, really inspiring day, rooted in our shared endeavour to tackle the biggest challenge of our generation, the climate crisis, and its impact on human health. Now is the time to act, and we are the team to deliver. The people in this room can make a difference, a practical difference, if we unite and work together with common purpose. We know the challenge. Human behaviour and activity is driving unprecedented climate change, as well as destroying the very environment we need to survive. The science is very clear. We are living on an increasingly warming planet, driven by greenhouse gas emissions and superpollutants, and our response is far too slow. We're starting to see the consequences at an alarming rate. Extreme weather events, heat waves, the spread of infectious diseases, mental health impacts, water and food security, and conflict. And it's killing us. Every country in the world is now impacted, and it will get worse. And that's the reality. But the good news is we know what to do. We have many of the solutions. We have the science and innovation. And there's even a great deal of public and political support for actions, despite what some people might be telling us. Acting on climate change is good for business. It's good for economy. It's good for our health. And it's the only choice we have to make if we want our children and grandchildren to flourish. So why are we not getting this done? What is stopping us acting at the pace and the scale required? What actions do we need to take to ensure the science and evidence drives financial and political decisions? What are the bridges between people and organizations that we need to build? What work do we need to do to ensure the solutions are credible and deliverable in different nations and have equity at their core? These are just some of the questions we will be asking today. Paul and I agreed that today must be 90% about solutions. Today is about action and implementation and what we will do together when we leave this room and way beyond London Climate Action Week. Given we are in London today, I want to take a moment to reflect on the opportunity we have in the UK. We have world-leading science and institutions in this country, extraordinary innovation and creative industries, and a government and population who care about climate, the environment, and health. Let's seize this moment and use this expertise and creativity to change the world for the better. We must work together, learn from one another, and understand our place in the rapidly changing world around us. It is vital we build coalitions and collaborate with the very best experts and leaders around the world. And on that note, I want to introduce our first guest, and I'm delighted that our first session is going to be a conversation with Dr. Jemilah Mahmood. Jemilah is an extraordinary human being and the perfect person to open this event. She trained as a doctor in obstetrics and gynecology and has more than 2 decades of experience working in conflict, disaster, and health crises around the world. Jemilah was special advisor to the former Prime Minister of Malaysia on public health during the COVID pandemic and holds several key advisory roles, wait for it, on Malaysia's Climate Action Council, the Consultative Council on Foreign Policy, the Economic Advisory Council, and I found out this morning, the Higher Education Council too. So, she's currently Executive Director of the Sunway Centre for Planetary Health in Malaysia, leading exceptional national and international work on climate and health. Please give a warm welcome to Jemilah as she takes the stage. Hello.
No pressure.
Slightly intimidated. So let's get to know you a bit more. What was young Jemilah like, and what brought you to medicine?
Well, first of all, let me just express how grateful I am to be here. I'm quite intimidated by the number of people in this room. The Jemilah you know today is the same Jemilah when she was a younger person. I hate being challenged. And when I was in school, someone challenged me because of racial, issues in Malaysia, that people like me would never become doctors. And so I said, okay, I will become one. And that's really what drove me. But also, I think, psychologically, I saw my father die when I was 11 from cancer. And I think deep down, there was a real inherent sort of drive for me to help people who are ill.
Wow. And now you focus your work on climate and health. Mm-hmm. And as a doctor in obstetrics and gynecology in Malaysia and an expert in humanitarian crisis, what can you tell us about the way climate change particularly affects women's health?
Yeah, I mean, we've heard how climate change affects every aspect of health, from snake bites to infectious diseases, to increase in non-communicable diseases, all sorts of respiratory illnesses and cancer, but also mental health. But climate change is not gender neutral. It really affects women much more than other genders, and in particular, in many, many ways. Let me tell you the story of what impacted me, seeing women walk post-cyclone in Philippines, just because they couldn't get access to healthcare, almost losing their pregnancies on the way. But the one image that will live with me forever is a woman in Mozambique climbing a mango tree to deliver her baby because of rising floodwaters and crocodiles in the that had overflown the river. I think that it's beyond the impact of, physical impact of climate change, but also heat, for example, increases the risk of miscarriage, premature birth. And other climate events also lead to stillbirths and other particular consequences. And of course, mental health, which most women are caregivers as well, and they take care of families. So the pressures on them will be terrible.
Wow, those are really horrific stories. And I can see then why your focus is so squarely now on climate and health. And you work at the very highest levels in Malaysia, as I mentioned, and with leaders from all around the world. And what have you learned about turning science and health evidence into policy and action, which we're so focused on today?
I think what I've learned working in Malaysia and with leaders globally, as you mentioned, is that science doesn't automatically lead to action. Evidence is essential. It doesn't live in a vacuum. And I think it needs translation, storytelling, trust, but also linking with economics. I think eventually most policymakers and decision makers want to see the money, where it's impacted. I think we owe scientists and researchers a profound debt, including Wellcome Trust. You've helped us understand why not only the scale of the climate and health crisis is so important, but also finding some of the solutions that we need to find together. But, let's be honest. The crisis we face today isn't one of ignorance. It's about inaction. It's about delay, disconnection, and the science is so clear. What's missing is urgency, courage, and political will. And climate change and climate delay has become the new climate denial, in my opinion. So too often, the brilliant science will vanish into a void, ignored, drowned out by distraction, disinformation, and algorithms. And that gap between what we know and what we do widens. It's not just about emissions, it's about imagination, it's about empathy, and it's about power. And we need to shift from just informing people to mobilizing them. That means investing not only in technologies and data, but in how people think, how people feel, and act. So behavior change is the missing link in the climate and health response. So, and let's be clear, fossil fuel companies and plastic industries have already mastered this through decades of manipulation. We must be smarter, we must be bolder and more united, and we need to beat them at their game. So I want to maybe suggest a couple of things. One, we need to break the echo chamber. We need to translate science into language people understand. Let's use media, culture, the arts, influences to make it resonate emotionally. Occupy public space. Speak up, be visible. Bring climate and health urgency into every conversation, not just expert rooms. We need to challenge institutions. We need to demand fossil fuel divestment and meaningful sustainability in our research, education, and funding. Design with people. Center community research and policy design on people, on communities who really understand and have the solutions at hand. Let them co-create the solutions with us. Act across boundaries, geographic, sectoral, institutional, and mobilize together. We have to do that much more. And, turning science into action is not just about evidence, it's about leadership, it's about courage, it's about connection. We don't just need experts, right? We need champions. And I believe many of them are right here in this room. This morning I woke up to read that Shell has been the case of Shell in Nigeria. So that's a really a wake-up call, I think, beginning for the fossil fuel industries. Last week, just before I came here, I spoke to a group of lawyers and judges who were shocked with the evidence presented to them. They were not aware. So we need to have these conversations with people who are not in the room with us.
Wow, that's a fantastic response. So many things there. Urgency, courage, the need for us to be united, the need for leaders. We'll be coming back to leaders in a bit. But I want to frame, so we have a fantastic program today, an extraordinary set of speakers. And the first session is about building resilient health systems. And we have many people in the room who work on healthcare. What do you think we need to do in the next few years to ensure our health systems are resilient to climate change?
I think the first thing I would say is we need our health practitioners to be aware. Only 15% of medical schools around the world teach climate and health. So if the health practitioners, who are probably the most trusted people in the world, nurses and doctors, aren't even aware, how do we expect policymakers to take action? So this is why I take a role in the Higher Education Council, because Malaysia will make it mandatory for all universities to include planetary health and sustainability in all university curricula from 2026. Wow. Yeah, so it's possible, right? But I think resilience in health systems starts with recognizing that we just can't treat illnesses. We need to address the root causes, many of which, as we know in health, the drivers are outside the health system. So I think we've got to design our cities better, grow our food more sustainably, manage our air, care for the environment. And I think that over the next few years, we need to prevent much more proactively on prevention, on primary care, and public health, especially in vulnerable communities, because it is not a balanced response. It is this lower socioeconomic status, people who are more vulnerable. And I think that we need to have to build climate risk directly into how we plan and deliver healthcare. And that is whether that's preparing for heat waves, pollution, or disease outbreaks, or climate-related migration. And that's another issue that we haven't really touched upon enough, because if more than 1 billion people are going to be displaced post-2050, how are health systems going to cope for that? How are countries that they will be migrating to be able to address these challenges? So I think it's huge. And I really want to re-stress the education bit. We need to not just educate a new generation of health practitioners, but everyone, and to recognize that health is central to how we address climate change.
Brilliant. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Okay, this afternoon, we're going to hear from Mary Robinson, the great Mary Robinson, on her reflections on leadership in these very challenging times. We have leaders here today from a wide range of organizations. What's your message about the kind of leadership we need right now?
I like to frame it as the 3 C's that we need. We need courage, we need compassion, and we need to be connected to people and the planet. And I think that it's not enough to manage the crisis. I think we need leaders who are willing to transform the systems causing harm. And I think that means putting planetary health at the center of every decision, recognizing that human health or the health of human civilization is deeply rooted and linked to the natural systems upon which it depends. So in this space, courage looks like this. It's about speaking uncomfortable truth, even when it's politically inconvenient. It means acting at the speed of science and not the pace of politics. It means listening, especially to those on the front lines, especially women, health workers, indigenous people, local communities, young people who are going to inherit this planet that has been, damaged by many of us. And we need leadership that just doesn't just promise change, right? It needs to build trust, it needs to drive inclusion, and leads with care. So this isn't just about emissions, I keep repeating this. It's about intergenerational justice, survival, and the kind of world we want to leave behind. And my call to all of us in this room, whether you lead a country, a clinic, a company, an institution, or a community, is this: step into the discomfort. Be the bridge between knowledge and action. Lead with empathy, and lead like lives depend on it, because they do.
Yeah. I think it's unbelievably your three C's: courage, compassion, and be connected. Compassion is the one that really actually gets me viscerally. So I think there's nowhere near enough compassion, and I think you've made that point beautifully. So let's finish on a message of hope.
Mm-hmm.
Let's finish on a message of hope. We've got a fantastic day ahead of us. You've challenged the room and all the speakers who are, I hope, trembling in their seats with the challenge you've given them. What are we going to do? What gives you hope, and what solutions do you think we need to focus on this week at London Climate Action Week and over the critical few years ahead?
I'm going to ask all of you in this room to think about what photograph you probably have as a screensaver on your phone. Most likely it's someone you really love. For me, it's my 1-year-old grandson, right? So for me, what gives me hope is the fact this is a packed room, number one, and it's really about people, and particularly young people. I've met such courageous young leaders and health workers and in the communities and front lines, and I think we have the solutions, we have the innovations that are available to us, and clean energy, resilient health systems, work, nature-based solutions, and I think we need to scale them with urgency and equity. Hope isn't passive. It's something we need to exercise. We need to just keep doing it, and we need to believe in it, and we need to just continue and carry that spirit forward. Not just at London Climate Action Week, but beyond.
Fantastic. That was a wonderful opportunity to speak with you, Jemilah. You're a real hero. I think the whole room is now in love with you. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much.